morning, Anne-Marie Imafidon. Thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me, Nick.
Listen,
Good to see you. It's been a while.
lovely to see you, even if it's back over a screen. So listen, let me timestamp, and I don't usually do this, but we're December 2021, couple of weeks before Christmas, which is all very yeah. And I timestamped to ask you the opening question, which is how has what's happened in STEM and kind of women in STEM, kind of diversity in STEM over the pandemic? Has been a positive experience? Has it regressed? Where are we thinking right now the situation is?
Yeah, so women in STEM as a space has probably regressed over the pandemic, but I think the wider sphere of women at work has also regressed over the pandemic, right? So folks having to work from home. Yes, the technology has been brilliant and has allowed them to work from home, but this isn't just about the technology, right? It's about all the other unpaid labor that they have to do at home, whether it's actually care in general, so whether it's childcare, whether it's elderly parents, whether it's sick relatives. There's been the headlines of kind of going back to the 1950s, and I think what we've seen in STEM is also there's so much of engineering, of science, of technology that goes on site. There's so much of it that demands maybe a little bit more time, a little bit more kind of headspace and thinking of folks that they've not necessarily been able to do during the pandemic. And so it's ended up getting in the way of the progress that we were seeing. So where we've got the positives of flexible working and working from different spaces, right, which we've always known was possible, but has never really necessarily been endorsed by tech leadership, we're now seeing those kind of boundaries blurred. And there was a drop off of scientific papers submitted by women kind of as soon as the first lockdown was announced, because of everything else that they had on their plate that they had to then be doing, that meant that actually that extra time that you do spend to put into academic papers to be able to submit them on in time and all the rest of it, then that time disappeared to all their caring responsibilities. The other thing that we saw was quite a big disinvestment in diversity and kind of HR and equality initiatives and positions. So you kind of have chief diversity officer, all those kinds of things. When there was the initial furloughing and even just letting go of folks, there were quite a lot of D&I folks who were let go, and quite a lot of budgets that were then slashed, because it was not necessarily top of priorities to get through the pandemic to have a diverse workforce, even though kind of what they needed. So we saw a little bit of actually moving backwards, and it wasn't really a positive time. Cooling down of recruitment, I'm painting quite a dark picture here. What a way to start! What a question, Nick. I blame you.
Listen, I was hoping really positive, but okay. So do you see green shoots, whatever you want to call it, kind of in terms of because we're still in the middle of it. So how do we get out of it? How do we navigate out and be back to where we were previously, push and forging ahead? I suppose more importantly.
I mean, in some would say that we're smack bang in the middle, right? They say a pandemic takes about 4 years anyway, which I know initially we were all like, this will be 6 months, which was kind of
2 weeks. 2 weeks,
2 weeks, yeah, max tops. It's like, no, 4 years. Let's try 4 years. So I think in terms of green shoots, what I've been saying to clients actually and to partners is the green shoots are not just going to happen. We have to cultivate, we have to germinate, we have to put the work in to go back to this better normal, right? There's so much talk about the new normal now. It's like, and there's build back better as well. So if we're going to move forward and not make the mistakes we're making before in STEM, but also learn from the fact that yes, there are a lot of things that you can do at distance, but actually you need to manage differently, right? You need to consider people as a whole and as a human being rather than just what comes in through the front door and turns up to work. So it has to be very intentional with the green shoots. And what we've been seeing at Stemettes is, we've seen a lot of growth, actually. We've seen a lot of investment in us. We've seen a lot of folks realize that the way things were going, it was not sustainable. The kind of makeup of their workforces was not going to help them face challenges like the pandemic and other challenges that might come on. And so we are seeing green shoots of folks being able to kind of actually, in slowing down and rebalancing and rethinking about what they want from life, being able to say, do you know what, actually, no, I should have, I've got agency and I've got the power, and I should be able to say, I want different types of people in my team, or I should be able to embrace diversity of different folks. I should be able to listen to the women, the technical women that are coming through in interviews or already in my organization. And I think there's quite a lot we owe to the murder of George Floyd as well, and that happened kind of early on, and actually, that kind of thing has been going on for ages, but that storm in a teacup almost of the pandemic and folks being on screens and having to see things means that, watching 9.5 minutes of someone dying was a bit of a jolt or a bit of a shock for folks to understand that actually how things were before was not great for everybody. How things were before, there were a lot of cracks. There are a lot of things that we can do to make sure that now going forward, there's more justice that we have baked into the way that we do STEM and the way that we build our teams and the way that we create the future, which is what we're in the business of as folks in STEM, creating the future and solving problems.
So can I ask, kind of on that basis, in hindsight for yourself, and I appreciate kind of we're still going through it, but in hindsight, as you look at Stemettes, you look at the progress of diversity and inclusion, is it about kind of a big bang and like that moment that actually we need to reposition everything, or was the incremental that maybe we were the path on prior to the pandemic ever going to fully work?
So I think incremental was going to work, but not fast enough. And I think we definitely, it's always nice to have a big bang, right? It's always easier to have a road to Damascus moment. And there's some big thing that happens and then everyone kind of sees the light and then now starts acting properly.
Yeah.
But it's wishful thinking that there's one big bang that will work for everybody, which I think even in the George Floyd incident, there's still so many injustices and so many things happening just along racial lines anyway. So as big a bang as that was, and it was a fairly big bang, it still hasn't rectified everything, right? Things haven't all just dropped into place. So I think with Stemettes or with whatever it is, it's it's a multifaceted problem that has been around for ages. This underrepresentation of women in STEM was not an overnight thing, right? It was a progressive erosion. It was a progressive erosion. It was historical erasure. There were a lot of things that folks were trying to kind of pull out of that narrative and pull out of that norm. We talk about changing the norm at Stemettes. And so whether it's working with the next generation, which is what we do, whether it's working with the current generation of technologists to say this space, actually, we've not got the right makeup in this space, we've not got the right people in this space, you're limiting your innovation by not having these people in the room. Even more than working on women themselves to say, okay, cool, you can retrain, you can come and be a part of this, which is what my new book is all about. She's in control. I think it's a big problem and it's far reaching, and a lot of it isn't even specific to technology, right? Technology is just the tool that multiplies it up and scales it up and perpetuates it bigger, faster, billions of times in a second, whereas before it was kind of piece by piece, individual to individual, organization by organization. So yeah, I mean, it's a bit of both, really. It's a cultural change, and those things always take a while to really fully be deep set and be systemic and long term. So yeah.
So what advice would you give to businesses now who are looking to recruit kind of talent and encourage talent to come and join them? And there's a lot of talk about the Great Resignation and all this other stuff that's going on. How can businesses encourage the right people, diverse people, kind of to help to join them and be part of their team in order to regrow? And
I think the number one thing that I've been saying to organizations is, in addition to being intentional about having different people in your organization, if you don't intentionally include, you'll unintentionally exclude, which I say all the time. I think that the bigger thing on that has been be ready to make mistakes, which I think for folks is quite hard to do. Of course, who wants to be a failure? Who wants to make mistakes? These things blow up in quite a big way. But I think there's so much of it that if you don't make that mistake, you'll never learn. Like you'll never gain from it. You'll never be, what is success without failures along the way? And so as an organization, you need to be willing to put the work in, to have the growth mindset and say, okay, we're going to run a series of experiments. We're going to do this and we're going to build and we're going to iterate and we're going to continually get better. But we have to break those eggs, right? We have to make the mistakes in order to do that and get better. And I think there's a fear, there's almost we want to get this right and get it right the first time, which you wouldn't do for anything else. You don't do that for revenue. You don't do that for new product releases. Yeah. You don't do that. There's nothing in business that you're like, we're going to do this and we're going to get it right the first time. It's like, no. It's a series of experiments. And so I've been talking to folks, and especially to technological firms who do this anyway in the way we do business, right? There's a new version of Facebook out every 2 weeks because we know there's a mistake. We know it was imperfect, the one that was 2 weeks ago. So that's why we have updates. That's literally what updates are. And so how can you, have that approach to your recruitment? How can you have that approach to retention? How can you have that approach to your culture? And how can you have that approach to promotion and picking folks that are then in your leadership that can then mean that you have this full circle upgrade almost, or evolution of who you have in your organization and where power sits, but also how innovation is unlocked by the different types of folks that I heard in your organization, that are valued in your organization, and that are recognized in your organization.
So listen, one last question. I should ask this as I've timestamped it, 2022. Give me some positive. What are you most excited about?
I've got a book coming out. Did I mention that?
You did mention it again. Mention it again.
I'm excited about She's in Control being out, and excited about it being in the hands of folks, and I'm excited about it being maybe one of these small big bangs. I'm kind of excited-ish about my stint on Countdown going out. I mean,
I'm excited for you.
I mean, thanks. I mean, Nick's talking to me, viewer, you break the fourth wall. He's talking to me on the day that this goes out for the first time. So the world's about to see me do maths again continuously. I say the world, Channel 4 viewers. So yeah, 2:10 every day on Channel 4 until mid-March. So that's going to be interesting. And I think I'm excited to break the back of this. Like we said, we're halfway through the pandemic. So I'm excited to start seeing some kind of light at the end of the tunnel, some sort of, a deeper fulfillment for folks. I work with my team, we get to meet lots of different people. As great as it is to be virtual and talk to inanimate objects all day long, I think sometimes getting out there and getting to see people, as much as I'm a hermit, I do actually like quite being at home. I think for other people around me, they are not hermits. And so allowing them to have more joy, feel more fulfillment, to have more balance in their life, in being able to leave the house sometimes. I'm really excited for that for them for 2022. I mean, the other thing ultimately is, going back to your question earlier, progress. Like my word for I always have a word for the year. My word for 2021 was enough. I'd had enough. I have enough. Yeah. There's a whole blog post, read the blog post about it. But my word for 2022 is going to be progress. And I think I'm excited to just see those green shoots and seeds that have been planted, starting to germinate, starting to leave the ground, starting to appear as green shoots. And I think I'm hoping that there's space for progress, like space for progress personally, space for progress professionally, space for progress in our culture. But enough people are fed up of enough things, without being too obvious and going too literal and getting too political even. I think a lot of people are fed up with a lot of things. And so I'm looking for, a combined sigh of, I've had enough of this. And then it's the stand up, right? The kind of the get going that then comes after that. So I'm excited for progress in 2022. That's my word for the year.
Listen, and that upbeat note and that kind of feeling, you've got me going. So I look forward to 2022, and I'll quote the word progress all over the shop. Thank you so much, Anne-Marie. Lovely chatting.
See you later.